So it's the following day and the green is out of my hair and all the makeup's off. So I just wanted to do a video to talk about, to sort of expand on the networking video. But this is not as positive as that video. So here we go. What happens if you do a job with a group and you don't like them? You don't get on with them for whatever reason. You know, you can't love everybody and they can't all love you. It's never love at first sight. But sometimes it can be hate at first sight, or there's just something about the group or the director or the musical director or whatever, somebody who just kind of puts you back up a little bit. Now, in the past, I have worked with groups who don't really want you there. You're an inconvenience to them, but they kind of have to tick that inclusivity box, so that's why you're there. And I don't like that. So what I started doing was I did an A4 leaflet and it explains how long I need, how much I charge, what I expect from them and what they can expect from me in return. It explains that where possible, I'd like to be part of the WhatsApp group so I can see what the cast members are talking about, or if there's any announcements. I like to be kept in the loop with things like rehearsal schedules and all that kind of stuff. So I send this thing out, I email it out to groups when I first want to work with them. So they've got it, so they can have informed consent. And I expect them to read it and understand it. But too often, you get as far ahead as tech rehearsal and you're suddenly told, well, no, you can't stand that side of the stage anymore. You've got to stand that side because we need props there. And you have to explain to them again, well, no, actually, this is where I have to stand because those are the seats that have been sold to the deaf audience. I can't ask them to move en masse because what if there's people over there who don't want to move, who don't want to give up their seats? So I put this leaflet out. I expect them to absorb the information. And that's it. And you forget about it. But sometimes you work with groups who they change the songs last minute and don't really mention it to you. And then when you bring it up with them, you say, oh, so those 4 songs you've cut, the ones that I've spent 3 months working on, but you've put these 4 new ones in a week before the performance. And they go, yeah, you can just wing it, can't you? Or they ask you to do social media, but on their terms. And when you say to them, well, actually, I prefer to do my own video and put my own captions on it because then I know it's correct. And they don't like that because you're not fitting in with their agenda. So sometimes you don't gel. It happens. It happens. And sometimes you have a bad experience with a group because they are not interested in looking after your health and safety, for example. So I had my trousers set fire to by a pyrotechnic because they put me in front of it and didn't tell me what it was, didn't check. Another time I was doing a show and I turned up for tech rehearsal and said, right, I need to be standing on the stage. And went, well, no, you're not going to be standing on the stage. We've got this kind of like rigging that had those cross beams, yeah? And we want you to stand on the cross bit. If I make one false move on there, my foot's going to go down and I'm going to injure myself. And they went, well, just don't move. So when you do come across a group that you didn't like or they didn't like you for whatever reason and it just isn't working, what do? What do you do? Because the Amdram world is quite a small world. And what you have is you'll have 3 actors in this group who 2 of them will also be in that group and 1 of them will also be in that group, or they'll be married to the director in that group who is sister or brother to the musical director in this group. So it's all kind of connected quite loosely. So word of mouth gets around, basically, positive and negative. So if you start slagging off a group to another group, they'll know about it. And then they will start slagging you off to everybody, and they know a lot more people than you do. So what do? Now, in the past, I have emailed groups after performances and said, thank you so much for the opportunity of working for you. I had a really good time, and I look forward to working with you again. But I also used to send emails to groups and say, thank you very much for the opportunity of working with you. Unfortunately, I will not be working with you again, and here's why. And I would give as constructive criticism as possible and say to them, I told you right at the beginning, or I tried to tell you right at the beginning what my role was, but you ignored that, and I did not feel like you valued my contribution, especially when you started cancelling things at the last minute and not telling me about it, or putting my health and safety at risk by putting me in a dangerous situation next to props that move and were going to cut the end of my nose off, or whatever. So I would email them and tell them, thanks, but no. But now I am significantly older and only slightly wiser, it has to be said. Now I don't do that. Because if they are the kind of group or director or musical director or whoever, if they didn't want to hear from you when you were working with them, they certainly don't want to hear from you after. So now what I do is I don't say anything to any other group. I just say, I've just worked with this group and this is what we did. And now I'm available for you. And if they say, did you enjoy it? Then you say, well, yeah, I really did enjoy the show. You have to be quite politic about it. So you don't slag off the group if you didn't like them. But in the future, when they email you or message you and say, hey, we're doing this show and we would really like you to come along and translate it for us, you then just email them back and say, I am so sorry. Thank you so much for thinking about me, but I'm sorry I'm not available. And you just keep it at that. If you're not available, if you go back to them and say, no, I'm not working with you again because I hated you. No, you just got to be nice. So yeah, that's what you do if you don't want to work with a group again. And I've had groups like that in the past where I would never work with them again if they were the last amateur dramatic group on earth. But I have other groups that I'm fiercely loyal to that I will work with all the time. Even if they send me a script 2 weeks before a performance, I'll say, yeah, all right, and I'll bend over backwards to do it because I like them and I know that they'll treat me okay. So it's all about word of mouth. Basically, if you don't want people gossiping about you, then you don't gossip about them. You don't say nasty things about them. You just say, I worked with this group on this project. That's it. If you then offer to do some work for a different group and you turn up to the first rehearsal and it's the same person who you didn't get on with and you weren't aware of that, then you have a decision to make. You can either go to them and say, I'm so sorry, but I can't do this after all. But then do you give them a reason or do you not? Do you say you've double booked yourself? Do you lie, basically? And I'm a terrible liar. So, yeah. Fun times, eh? But hopefully, it's only happened to me twice in 6 years that a group has made me feel so undervalued and unsafe that I have vowed never to darken their door again. So that's 2 groups in 6 years. That's not too bad, is it? So that is my advice about networking with groups that you may not want to work with. And I'm sure I will post another video because tomorrow I start on the new show, which isn't a great show actually. And I've never translated a show that I didn't like. Sometimes you go into it thinking, oh, this is going to be awful, but then you kind of fall in love with it. So that might be the case with this one. Remains to be seen. But I'm going to translate this one differently, and I will talk to you about that in my video, possibly tomorrow, possibly the next day. So that's it for now. Shrek is done. It's move on, move up, and yeah, just go forth.